Hello everybody and welcome back to the most intense race that I've ever had on Gran Turismo Online in VR. Now I haven't had that many, of course, I'm still learning as a sim racer, but we're jumping into qualifying here. This is the GR4 class with the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. And I love this car for looks alone, but I chose it for today because I was kind of meshing with it pretty well and I could take the corners, well, as nicely as I possibly could in my early stages of learning. Now, I'm taking you through my final lap of qualifying before we get into the actual race itself. We're on Dragon Trail Seaside, and this is a really lovely looking map and one that I came to love with its many twists and turns and quite technical sections, especially near the end. Now, we had a very exciting race here, but I was getting to know the track fairly well because I'd done a lot of laps in qualifying in previous sessions, and I just jumped in to do one more before the race actually started. A long left-hander here that I really loved, and then you can go flat out through this section, up, down towards the downhill before the right-hander, and then you get into the chicane. Messed it up a little bit, but I knew that I could take it flat and be okay there. So I was getting to learn the ins and outs of the track, and unfortunately there were a couple of people in the lobby who did not want to respect the rules of the track at all, but we'll get on to them when we get on to the race. Now, big bit of contact there. That's a big no-no, but I'm taking you through the final lap of my qualifying because I took this final lap to see how far I could push the limits on that right-hander before coming into the chicane here. That's actually a double chicane, which I really enjoyed once I got the hang of it, but I was just testing how far I could push that right-hander. So when I got into the race, I wouldn't have to do any guesswork and I'd know exactly when to brake to get a good exit. Now, I didn't perfect it, as you will see. I'm a while off doing that, but I did get a lot better than I had in quali, and over the course of the race I got a lot more comfortable. Now, before we jump into the actual race itself, only 20% of you are subscribed, so if you do like the content and like PSVR2 or sim racing, we do all of those very frequently here. So feel free to hit that sub button. We're on the journey to 10k, and you'll shut me up very quickly if we get there quicker. So feel free to sub. Anyway, that's my qualifying over. Let's get on to the race. Looking at the starting board here, we're starting in 9th. I can definitely do better than that as we head into the race. And keep an eye on a gold Toyota Supra, I believe the car is. Not the one in front you can see on the time boards right now, but one behind that caused, well, a lot of issues. Okay, so we are lining up on the grid for a rolling start. I'm not the biggest fan of rolling starts, but in GT, especially in these lower down lobbies, they do help to mitigate a lot of crashing, and also ghosting helps stop a lot of crashing. And since I'm in a lower driver tier, I'm slowly making my way up there, but this lobby did have some measures on to make sure there was not a lot of contact, but it's getting better. It's getting better. There's less ghosting the more and more I play, but there is a little bit here. If you see that, that is why. So behind we have a Mustang, which keep an eye on as well, a big player in this race, but we kick it off and my lovely Aston Martin flying down the pit straight, and I'm looking to see if I can make up any positions in the first couple of corners. We're coming up to a long right and then a fairly sharp left that I did struggle to find the braking point on a couple of laps, but for the most part I was nailing okay. So we're being pushed by the red car behind. I do make contact there. I did mess up on that first corner. Luckily they were okay, but I did feel really bad about that. And if anything, they got a bit of a speed boost from my hit there, from my shunt, but I definitely learnt my lesson of not to send it too far up there. So that blue 650S, I think it is, goes way off on the left, and we have a big collision with the cars behind, as you can hear and see. But I actually escape fairly well, making it up to P5, which I was happy with. But we're battling here, switch to P5 and P6, and you know, I've got to try and keep that position. I know I can take it flat through this section up here for all the way down, so I thought, you know, we'll send it. Hopefully the other drivers know that you can take it that way, and luckily they do. As we got this Porsche in front, a bit of contact between the drivers behind, and the red driver behind us really pressuring as we come into the right-hander down here. Now, taking this a little too wide, I would say, but I was giving kind of room to the driver behind, trying to be a bit respectful. It's no good if we both end up in the barriers. That's not going to benefit anybody. So if I give away the position now, I can take it back later. If I die, I can't, you know, take it back later. And there was a bit of contact going side by side into the last chicane, the second part of that, as a big cloud of smoke kicks up in the back and dust of a huge collision. But there's three of us in this little battle here around for P5, and I'm in front at the moment, taking that middle line through the corner, hoping that a few mistakes are made up front. and a little bit of contact between the driver on the right with me, but they backed off and we were all good. And a little glimpse of that Mustang behind, who, again, comes into play a little bit later. Powering down the main straight, and now we have that gold Supra, I think it is. I'm going to call it a Supra for the rest of the race. I'm fairly sure it is, but I could be wrong. The Toyota behind. An absolute menace on the track, and the cause of a lot of the incidents behind. Now, a bit of ghosting there as the driver in yellow in front has a little bit of a spin. But, you know, all of us are kind of being as respectful as possible as we can be during these quite hectic first couple of laps. And that Supra behind, again, battling the Mustang, which is going to become a fair bit of a theme. But they do actually have some pace back there, and the Mustang goes flying because the Supra has a little bit of a dirty move going on there, which we'll see rear its head. Now we're going straight through the windy S-bends here, the right-hander. You can take this absolutely flat, as I said. And I think there might be a little bit of contact there, yeah, which sends the driver in yellow off to the right. They braked in the middle of that basically tight couple of corners, which you don't need to. You can actually power straight through that and take some speed. But yeah, they braked, ended up making contact lightly with me and went off the side of the road. But that does mean that the Supra is now right behind me. That golden car that's always going to be there is looking for that gap to get past me, I think. But in reality, he's looking for that gap to kill me and take me out of the race. So I've got to get the power down a fair bit here. I really like this bit of strip, this straight down towards the final right-hander. It's a lovely view out to the sea. In VR especially, it looks really, really cool. If you're a normal sim racer and you haven't tried VR, or if you have GT7 and you haven't tried VR, it's a really great tool to use. So I'd recommend it, and especially if you use like that, they make it really worth it. On top of the added immersion, obviously, I'm always going to push PSVR2 and especially GT7 in VR to people, because it makes you feel more connected to your cars, to the races, and although there are a couple features missing in terms of timing boards, that's all you really get as a detriment. I say as I go flying through the first two corners really badly. That would have been track limits if it was a bit more strict. But I was punished aptly by that golden Supra gaining a lot of time. And I think, okay, he's going to come in and try and take me down the inside, which he does. And I did squeeze him a little there. There was contact, and I was annoyed at the time, but I did squeeze him a bit. So benefit for the doubt, I've, you know, kind of pushed him a little bit there, and it's resulted in some contact. But I'm confident, you know, I can make up the place. We're all good. Very high-speed section as he starts kind of winding and trying to block me off in really weird ways. And it's just some drivers that you see in this driver level that don't really have that much respect for you and want to just kind of block you off wherever they go. This guy, unfortunately, was one of them as we come to the right-hander. He makes a lot of moves where I'm looking for a gap, I'm pulling on like beside him, and he will just cut that off completely at the last second under braking sometimes, which, you know, isn't what you want. But obviously it's online racing, you just got to adapt to whatever's happening around you, and if you can save yourself, do that, because to finish anywhere high up in the race, you've got to finish first, don't you? So I'm kind of keeping my distance a little bit, hoping that he makes one of these mistakes that he's always been making, or that maybe I can use the toe to get a bit closer and go down the inside. It's the whine of the V8 Vantage coming around the right-hander towards the pit straight. What a beautiful mountain backdrop that is. Anyway, zooming down here, I've learnt my lesson from last time, at least I hoped, from not absolutely overcooking it into the first two corners. It did take me a couple more laps to really nail that down, but I did do a lot better here than I did last lap, and then I improve on that again and again, actually downshifting properly, taking a bit too much curb, but it's better than absolutely going into the grass like I did last time. So still not perfect whatsoever, as you can see. Again, outside track limits a bit there, but I'm slowly learning my lesson. It's getting into my thick skull that I can't really overcook it into there. As much as I want to overtake the Golden Supra, I've got to bide my time and take these corners well, otherwise I'm going to end up with a penalty, aren't I? So I just have to keep it chill. I just have to keep it chill. And speaking of penalties, there might be a bit of a rough one coming up from me again, being slightly stupid. But at least it's not on track, but you'll see what I mean by then. Anyway, powering through my favorite sector of the track, not having to let off too much at all, but I am a bit windy here, so I'm looking for that gap. And again, the Supra just keeps pulling across, which is, you know, in his right to do so in certain areas, but there's a limit to how many times you can, you know, change over and defend, which again, he pulls straight in front of me as we're both braking into here. Clearly attempting just to cut me off, getting, you know, me to hit into the back of him and send myself into the barriers or whatever. Again, he's just pulling a bit closer, but I'm thinking, you know, if I can follow him in here, I might make a mistake, like he did just lose a bit of traction there. But I'm not going to get much purchase in getting past this guy at the moment, unfortunately. Now, as we come down towards the final right-hander and the pit straight, it begins to dawn on me that I need to pit at some point, and I want to kind of pit with this guy because I don't want him to undercut me. But then I remember a tip from last video, which is that you don't actually have to change your tires or refuel, you can just pit. And as you can see, I went for it at the last second when I remembered that. Unfortunately, I cut across white lines because I was panicking. But as you can see, I took your guys' advice, didn't change my tires, didn't refuel, because you don't need to in this race. You just need to go through the pits. So I was all good, my tyres were still fairly fresh, I was feeling confident in them, and obviously I don't want more fuel, that's just going to make me heavier, so I pulled straight out. But unfortunately, yeah, we did get a penalty, which will force me to decelerate in a bit, but I think the Supra did either pit for either new tyres or new fuel, because they were a bit further behind than me. I think it's a Citroen in front I just made a bit of contact with, but I've let them kind of go away with it, and the driver becoming ghosted in front, letting me through, which is very nice. So yeah, the Golden Supra is not too far behind, but I'm hoping that I'm clear of them now, and that'll be the last of my worries. Unfortunately, as you will soon find out, it is not, as I need to decelerate on the final straight before the pit straight in a little bit. But at the moment, I just need to push, make as much of a gap as possible before I get to that penalty point, and then slow down, because if I can create a bit of a gap, it means that maybe the Supra will end up behind me and not in front of me, because from my experience so far in the race, they've been more of a problem when they were in front, trying to basically outbrake me and send me into a wall. Whereas even though they have been aggressive from behind, there weren't as many moves to try and catch me out. So I just thought, you know, I've got to push, create that gap, and maybe, just maybe, only a couple cars will go past me and I'll still have a chance to keep my position a little bit, which at the moment is P8, and again, I'm going to have to decelerate, so I'm going to lose a couple positions, but we are going to gain a couple when other people go into the pit, so it's not all lost at the moment. I'm not going to end up lower than I was, hopefully. So yeah, we served that penalty, and makes me very sad watching the other two cars go by, but I'm still thinking, you know, I've got some pace here. I was right behind the Supra when he was there, so hopefully I can get past him again, especially if these two are fighting, which they are, because the Supra is absolutely battering them down the main straight, which is just pretty rough to watch, all the bloody smoke and clouds flying out. But yeah, I failed to create that gap. Unfortunately, with the cars behind, I didn't manage to push that hard. I just couldn't get out of the car. But I have managed to make the most of them fighting in front and using that pace, especially as they go flying a little bit there, to catch back up, and maybe if there's a big incident or a big mistake, then I can get past, which the Porsche, unfortunately, the grey Porsche, silver Porsche, did have a big incident there going off track, and unfortunately, yeah, lost their position, so lends us up another one. The Supra also catching a bit of grass there on that last corner, and you'll be able to hear as I go down this usually area where I'm going very, very quickly. I let off a bit because I want to create a bit of space between me and the cars in front in case there's an incident. I don't want to be caught up in that at all. I don't want to rely on ghosting to let me pass through. I just want to keep a little bit of a gap, but not too much. So much so that I can actually make a move when it comes to the next maybe right hand or next couple corners and gain the speed again. So I've just been cautious throughout that flat out section that I usually am flying through. And again, the Supra comes in to cut me off, but he makes contact with me and then the barrier by trying to outbrake me again, which is a very common theme with this person, unfortunately. But that does mean it puts them behind us, which is great. So we've just got the yellow car in front, and then that Mustang that I talked about finally comes into view. I believe a Ukrainian driver in front, which is absolutely powering along. They put in a great drive, which unfortunately ends up tangled with the Supra again in the future. So I'm coming down here now on P7, looking again for a gap and making contact on the left a little bit, unfortunately, and getting hit by the Supra. You can see spinning out in the back a little bit, trying to regain traction, and another big crash noise from the back left as the Supra makes another big mistake. But The fight is now on with the Ukrainian driver in front in the Mustang, a very nice Mustang that I want to see nicely in my rearview mirror, so we're going to go for that. Now, at this point, I've got these corners down a little bit better than I was. I'm being a bit more cautious, but I am still taking curb, unfortunately. But my routes, especially through the next corner, are a lot better. Still more rumble strip and curb than I'd like, but it is getting better and faster through these sections. And more importantly, I'm making up positions, which is what I wanted to do. Now, I'm beginning to get within a little bit striking distance with the Mustang. If he makes any sort of mistake, I'm going to be pouncing on it up to that P6 position if I can. But again, I'm just thinking that Supra's still behind. But what if, it comes to my brain, what if I pass the Mustang and then force him to tackle the Supra for me, so I don't have to deal with that mess anymore and don't have the potential of putting me out of the race, which is what I'm scared of at this moment. I've been really fighting for it and putting my heart and soul into this one, a rookie sim racer that I am, but I'm thinking if I can get a good entry in here, perhaps I can put him behind me. Unfortunately, I go wide, and again, we are very close to each other. Now, I've got to hand it to this person. We were very respectful through these next couple of laps. Whenever they had priority, I let them go. Whenever I had priority, they let me go, and we gave each other space as much as possible. It was really refreshing to have this sort of fight when compared to the absolute scrap with the Supra, who's now reared back into view, annoyingly, and is looking for a gap, and instead decides that I am the gap and hits into the back of me with another smack, which is just really annoying. But luckily, they go incredibly wide into the corner. I take a nice line and put them in my rear view again, just to show that those type of moves don't really pay off as the drivers behind go wide yet again. Now, down the main straight, I just need to power through here and keep in front of the Supra, because if he takes me through these first two corners and I mess up again like I did in the early laps with the same guy behind me, I'm going to be in really, really big trouble. But we're in P6 now, so we're in a good position, but I am looking for that P5, and it might come to me here as we pass just about the Mustang, and I'm checking that left side so often, making sure that gap is still there between us, trying to make sure I don't kill this guy, because I don't want to be someone who ruins this race. But manages to pull off a good move down the inside. Very nice move, maneuver from him. And that's a glimpse of the Supra having another battle with many drivers. It wasn't just prejudice against me, it was just everybody on the grid. He decided he needed to put in the wall. So yeah, we're coming down here into the S-bends here and the flat out section. We both take it very well. And I'm looking again to pull off this move into the right-hander that failed last lap. And I'm trying exactly the same thing, but trying to measure my braking a bit more this time. And again, he goes down the side very skillfully and takes me through there, which, I mean, I've got to hand the position to him and attempt to get it back over the next couple of corners and the straight. Now, I'm following it incredibly close behind because I know this guy's other laps have been fairly flat out, and I can kind of push it without thinking he's going to brake really erratically and send him into the wall. But again, I am feeling the pressure a little bit from the Supra behind. He's always there in the rear view because, surprisingly, their drive was actually very, very good. Like, their pace on paper was phenomenal, but it's just every time they pulled up, they would try something incredibly stupid and end up almost taking all of us out of the race, which I don't really understand. When you got that good pace, is it just a lack of spatial awareness, or is it just being an absolute bastard? I don't know. But again, I'm looking for this move on the Mustang so I can put him behind me and make him deal with the mess that's behind, and I get that move into the first couple of corners, or so I think. But he does put up a bit of a fight, but yeah, we're through. Feeling good about that one. This kind of kicks me into a bit of a higher gear as I'm now on P5. I'm a little bit nervous because if I mess this up, it's going to be a long 20 minutes of racing wasted. But I can just keep checking my rear view, my wing mirrors, and luckily I managed to put down the power and get some good pace here to put them behind me and make, that Ukrainian driver unfortunately has to deal with the Supra behind, who is an absolute menace on track. So I'm sorry if you're watching this, Mustang driver, I put you through that, but unfortunately, someone had to take the fall with this guy, and I didn't want it to be me, and I wanted this position in P5, so we're coming into the final couple of laps here, and I'm just putting the power down, getting that gap between us, and doing it pretty well, thankfully. And to be honest, as we come into the final lap of the race, not much else happened, although you will see possibly in the camera view that the Ukrainian driver has disappeared, and that's because, unfortunately, he was lost to the super driver. He was taken out of the race, so rest in peace, that guy. His sacrifice was not in vain. But yes, after that, yeah, you can see me kind of sigh there and be happy with that P5. A very tough race, a very fun race, probably the most fulfilling, intense one that I've had. So thank you all for watching. Thank you to our patrons, Luke Bentley, Phil Irving, Hazit Mirza, Ace Gamer, and Hippie Pickle. And thank you to our YouTube member, Jin007, a license to chill. If you want to join the Patreon or YouTube membership, the links all in the description. Thank you for watching once again, and I'll see you all in the next one.